initially was that, hey, maybe AJ and his family would prefer to be in Utah, and they would do to Washington what Washington has quite frankly done to other organizations over the years, and that's to encourage their prospect to not work out there. Remember, a year ago, the roles were reversed. We had Ace Bailey, who was all the intel was saying he wanted to end up in Washington, and he was canceling workouts left and right. Well, now, could it be turnabout as fair play? Could AJ say, no, thanks, I'm not going to do that, try and dictate his way to Utah? That was the speculation, I would say, about 24 hours ago. Now, since then, we've started to hear a little bit more intel that they don't expect Dybantsa and his family will play that sort of.
Sports HQ, AJ Dybantsa, the favorite to go #1 overall out of BYU. The Wizards holding that #1 pick. Will they take him #1? Our Adam Finkelstein says it's not necessarily a match, reporting that AJ to DC is not the lock that most had assumed it would have been when the Wizards won the lottery on Sunday. So let's get Adam Finkelstein in here. He's been talking to draft scouts and team execs at the Combine in Chicago. What are they telling you about the #1 prospect and his ultimate destination?
Yeah, well, Chris, I want to be clear. I still stand by our Sunday mock. I do believe that AJ will most likely be the #1 pick to Washington, but the sentiment here in Chicago is that I asked another team picking in the top 4 if they felt confident enough that they could prepare as if he would definitively be off the board and build their scenarios that way. And he told me more matter-of-factly than I expected. Absolutely not. He was surprised. The initial broadcast made it seem as if this was a foregone conclusion. And just a couple hours ago, I asked AJ himself in media availability about his workout schedule. Lots of times, if you're the perceived #1 pick, you say, hey, I'm not working out for anybody else. But he was very non-committal on that, said he was going to get together and figure out exactly who he would work out for after the Combine was over. So this is not something where, this is not Cooper Flagg to Dallas. This is not Victor Wembanyama to San Antonio, where we can say, hey, we definitively know today what is going to happen with that #1 pick.
Well, obviously, he played his college ball in Utah. He has ties to Jazz owner Ryan Smith, who was heavily involved in the prep team that Dybantsa played for. I know you've been talking to some people about the Jazz potentially moving up to get him at #1, and the owner was asked about that today. And while he didn't say they would, didn't say they wouldn't either. Contrary to popular belief, we don't control that. We're trying to win a championship, so everything should be on the table. Austin and Danny have also been known to do some pretty crazy stuff on draft night. That is the Jazz, what they call their governor, Ryan Smith. What are you hearing about the Jazz potentially moving up to #1 to get him?
Well, I don't know that they are going to I don't know that they're going to be the one to make the call. I think the speculation initially was that, hey, maybe AJ and his family would prefer to be in Utah, and they would do to Washington what Washington has quite frankly done to other organizations over the years, and that's to encourage their prospect to not work out there. Remember, a year ago, the roles were reversed. We had Ace Bailey, who was all the intel was saying he wanted to end up in Washington, and he was canceling workouts left and right. Well, now, could it be turnabout as fair play? Could AJ say, no, thanks, I'm not going to do that, try and dictate his way to Utah? That was the speculation, I would say, about 24 hours ago. Now, since then, we've started to hear a little bit more intel that they don't expect Dybantsa and his family will play that sort of game. And if that's the case, then I do expect he will be the #1 pick for Utah. And I'll also say this, I think Peterson's probably a better fit with Utah's current roster, but there are a lot of interesting dynamics here.
And then, of course, you got Mr. Boozer, you know, who works for the Utah Jazz. Why wouldn't that be a match with a Boozer joining a Boozer in Utah?
Well, you know, for a couple reasons. Number one, they just traded for Jaren Jackson. They have Lauri Markkanen, so there's some redundancy there from a positional standpoint. Number two, I think you're trying to get the highest upside prospect you can get at that second overall spot. And Darren Peterson, if he's 100%, he just said in media availability today, he confirmed to what basically everybody already knew, that he was not 100% this year at Kansas, but says now he is. So if you get that version of him, I believe he's the highest upside prospect in this class. So there's a really compelling case to be made for him at number 2, especially on a Utah roster where he could step right in and share the ball with Keontae George, who's coming out of breakout season. But it is a little bit of a family affair there because of Carlos Boozer's spot as a scout with the Utah Jazz. But I do think the fact that they already have a couple of forwards that they pair together kind of gives them, at least Carlos Boozer, enough of a narrative to say, like, hey, we couldn't take him. We just already had somebody, an all-star, 2 all-stars, in fact, at his position.
This draft is thought of as so deep at the top all the way through the lottery. How much do you think could this shuffle up if, indeed, we do get a trade at the very top of this thing?
Well, I think there's a top 4 in this draft, and there's a lot of speculation about what could happen. I think the Memphis pick at 3 is another turning point. I think that's going to be either Boozer or Caleb Wilson if Darren Peterson is off the table. But I think the big 4, in whatever order, they will really go 1 through 4. We can mix that up however we want. I don't think that's certain. As I said, I still think our mock on Sunday, where we have Dybantsa 1, Peterson 2, Boozer 3, and Wilson 4, I do believe that is the most probable scenario, but it is not a guarantee. 5 is where this draft, at least the second iteration of this draft, really begins. The Clippers own the 5th pick. We'll see what happens there. And then there could be a lot of movement from that point on, with different teams kind of shopping their picks. Other teams that need a point guard in this point guard heavy middle of the lottery looking to move up. Potentially teams who don't need a point guard in that spot looking to move back and acquire other assets in the process. I think that's a spot where you might see some speculation about possible trades here in the next few weeks.
All right, Adam Finkelstein from the NBA Draft Combine in Chicago. As you look at the 1 through
Warriors Nation News. Dub Nation, let me ask you something that sounds impossible until you really think it through. What if the Warriors do not just make a safe pick at number 11? What if they get bold, jump the board, and make a real push to draft AJ Dybantsa? Because that is the only version of this that makes sense now. The Warriors did not win the lottery. Washington got the number 1 pick, Utah got number 2, and Golden State landed at number 11 after a 37-45 season. So no, AJ to the Warriors is not the easy path. It is the aggressive path. It is the if you truly believe this kid is franchise-changing, go get him path. And that is why this idea hits so hard for Dub Nation right now. Now, here is why fans even dare to dream. AJ Dybantsa is not just another prospect. NBA.com says he entered the 2026 draft after a huge freshman year at BYU, where he led the nation in scoring, and he has been widely discussed as one of the very top prospects in the class. NBA.com also noted he sat in the lottery room as the order came in, with Washington at 1, Utah at 2, and Memphis at 3. In other words, this is a real top-tier talent, not a random upside swing. If Golden State somehow got involved, they would be chasing one of the biggest prizes in the entire draft. And this is where it gets exciting from a Warriors perspective. AJ gives you the thing Golden State has been desperate to find, a possible young star who can help bridge the final Steph Curry years into the next era. Yahoo's mock on NBA.com literally said the Warriors have been desperately searching for a young star to extend Curry's championship window and bridge into whatever comes next, but that it became harder after they did not get lucky in the lottery. That line matters because it tells you the need is real. If the front office looks at AJ and says that is the guy, then standing still at 11 might not be enough. Now, imagine the basketball. Steph Curry still bends the floor like almost nobody in history. Steve Kerr is staying, and that means the Warriors are still committed to trying to win now while developing what comes next. Put AJ Dybantsa into that environment, and suddenly you are talking about elite shot creation learning next to the greatest shooter ever, inside one of the smartest offensive systems in the sport. He wouldn't have to walk in and carry the whole franchise on day one. He could grow with space, with gravity, with structure, and with the spotlight already partly absorbed by Steph. That is the dream. That is why this feels bigger than a normal draft conversation. But let's keep it real, because real talk matters. The Warriors drafting AJ Dybantsa is only a real possibility if they make a real move. At number 11, that is not the expected outcome. NBC Sports Bay Area says Golden State received exactly the number 11 pick, and mock drafts right now are matching them more with names like Kareem Lopez, Ade Mara, or Yaxo Lendenberg, not AJ. So if you want Dybantsa in a Warriors jersey, you are talking about a blockbuster trade up, not luck falling from the sky. And honestly, if the Warriors truly believe AJ is special enough to shift the franchise, that is the kind of gutsy decision contenders make. So, here's my final take, loud and clear, favorable to the Warriors. AJ Dybantsa to Golden State is not the likely outcome today, but it is a real possibility if the Warriors choose aggression over patience. And if they did pull it off, that could become the move that gives Steph one more real runway while launching the next face of the franchise at the same time. Dub Nation, tell me right now, if the Warriors had a real chance to trade up for AJ Dybantsa, would you want them to go all in and do it? Drop your take in the comments, hit like, and subscribe to Warriors Nation News.